guess we're at 2 o'clock. We see Steve with his camera off. I don't see Sherry yet.
Sherry is just having trouble getting logged in. She just sent me an email, so I'm sending her an invite again. And Steve was here.
I'm here, Andy.
Yep. Okay.
Afternoon, everyone.
Hey, Steve, everybody.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock, so I'd like to get started with our meeting this afternoon. Welcome you all to our council meeting of May the 9th. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order. And we have adoption of the agenda. Now we have the standard recommendation here, but we did have some other correspondence that we may wish to include in the agenda. So
I think we have to, don't we?
We don't have to.
You can amend the agenda by a majority vote of council. And I know that Sherry wanted to be here for this, and I don't see her yet.
Okay, well, we'll just wait a minute or two.
I can tell you, though, outside of amending the agenda, there are two bylaws. The pillar bylaw, as it appears on your agenda, has been amended. So the bylaw that will be signed is different from what you see on there. It's not substantial, and the planners can speak to that. And the fees and charges bylaw, one of the schedules needed updated, so it'll be a little different than what you see here. Just a minor, there was one line that needed amended, so those are going to be different, the ones that get signed. And do I see? I don't see Sherry yet. I'll resend it.
Excuse me.
Oh, there she is. Okay. Should be seeing her. There.
Good
Hello.
afternoon, Sherry.
Hello. How are you today?
Hello,
Welcome.
Sherry.
So we've officially called the meeting to order, but we're stopped at the adoption of the agenda because there's maybe some correspondence we wish to receive as part of the agenda. So we didn't want to bypass that without you being along.
Okay.
So I know there was correspondence received from the Mount Forest Lions late last week that was circulated to council late last week. So my recommendation would be to amend the agenda to include that correspondence. Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to further amend that agenda. There was a letter that came in late today from Ray Tout, who has some comments with regards to the Aquatics Committee. If Council so sees fit to do that.
I don't know if you want to move two separate amending motions so that if one doesn't pass, the entire motion is lost. So you could get a mover and seconder to include the May 3rd, 2022 correspondence from the Mount Forest Lions Club and vote on that. And then get a mover and seconder on adding Ray Tout's letter. If you put them both in one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. I think that makes sense. So we would have the normal recommendation is that the agenda for the May 9th, 2022 regular meeting of council be accepted and passed. We're going to change that to be amended to include the correspondence from the Mount Forest Lions dated May 3rd. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Lisa. Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, and then further motion would be to include correspondence from Ray Tout. I don't yet have that correspondence, but
I sent it to you just in an email,
okay,
just a few minutes ago.
I was just gonna
Okay,
say,
so it
I
was
don't have
received.
that either.
I'll
It was
search,
just received today.
like
Do
about,
we
yeah.
have a mover and a seconder to include that in today's agenda? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Dan. Any discussion on that? I would suggest I have no problem including it in today's agenda, but I think to discuss it, really, council members should have an opportunity to review it before being thrust into the discussion on that. So if we are going to include it in today's agenda, then I would suggest we probably defer discussing that until everybody has had a chance to review it, and it would come back at our next meeting. Or we can include it at the next meeting. It's up to council in that regard. Any other discussion? Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's relevant to today's discussion. So if we could take a few minutes at some point so that council has an opportunity to review it. It is related to the aquatics discussion that we're going to have later today.
Okay.
I just circulated to everyone. I misspoke, Mayor Lennox. I had neglected to send that to you, but everyone should find it in their inbox right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I just got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that further amendment of the agenda? That's carried. Thank you. So next up, we have disclosure of pecuniary interest on anything on today's agenda. I have none to disclose. Councillor Burke,
No,
Councillor McCabe,
I have none, Andy.
Councillor Hearn,
No.
Councillor Yake.
No.
Okay, thank you. We're on to presentations. And our first presentation, we have Faye Craig giving us an update on the Arthur 150. Is Faye with us, Karen?
She is with Lynn, who I've moved into the meeting with Patty Emery. But Lynn and Patty, your cameras are off and you're muted. There's Patty. And there she is.
So good afternoon, councillors and Mayor Andy. It's our pleasure to have been asked to join the afternoon meeting. And it's my pleasure to introduce the steering committee. We are very grateful to be here, and I have Jeff on my right as the person that's doing the Facebook page for the 150 and his book and crosses, and you'll hear more about that later. Then we have Lynn as our secretary, Lynn Rollins. Patty is as well, with Marilyn Toyer on my left, joining in here today too. And they are very responsible young ladies, and they are doing our souvenirs, t-shirts, banners, ribbons, buttons, and so on. Of what you'll see, we're sporting our 150 Ask Me buttons during the meeting. So you probably have questions for us. And so perhaps that would be our best way, rather than me rambling on with all the many things we are planning to do and have done, than to ask questions and we would answer anything that you are unaware of.
Okay. Any questions for Faye and the rest of the crew. Steve?
I have just a quick one through you, Mayor Lennox, and to Faye and the steering committee. Thank you for all that you've done already. And what we've seen in the past looks like it's going to be a fantastic weekend. And I believe I went through Councillor Hearn and asked what I can do that weekend to help.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for that offer. Things that we are wondering about is Lions Park perhaps needs some grooming with signage and the footing and some of the playground equipment. Also wondering if attention could be particularly given at the cenotaph with the interlock and so on. We've had great cooperation from Dan already with the grooming and picking up of branches and so on. So, and also McPherson Park. We would like some assistance there. If you have any time, if you could approach us with time that you have, and we could meet up and get working on those things.
Any other questions?
Okay, I have a question and I'm not sure who I'm supposed to direct it to. Is there such a thing as a grant of some sort for storekeepers to repair or just get a new sign on the outside of their store? The Maroon Market great big sign is in horrible shape. Is there such thing as a grant to help them pay for a new one?
So the short answer is yes. We have a community improvement program which does deal with signage and facade improvements downtown. It's a shared cost arrangement.
Okay,
But certainly if they're interested in doing some upgrades, they need to contact Dale Small, our economic development officer, to understand the details of the program and see if it can fit with what they need.
thank you very much.
Our youth activities will take place on the Friday, Andy and councillors, and they will be up at the curling club. And the person that isn't here on the steering committee because he's in school today, the youth rep on our steering committee is Connor Schmidt, doing a great job. So Friday will be an abundance of activities up at the curling club. And Saturday, as you know, is shop local. And the optimists are working well with us. Everyone's working very good together. And then on Sunday, we have the ecumenical church service and ball games and the Ag Society doing a roast beef dinner. And everything I think is on schedule. I'm very pleased with the efforts that everyone is volunteering and putting forward.
Okay, thanks, Faye. Any other questions from council? Well, I would, Lisa, go ahead.
I'm trying to draw a few things out. Faye, I know that you've got shirts available, maybe for the benefit of other council members. How do we find how to order those?
Okay, I can answer that one for you. There are two choices. You can either go to Jeff's page and do the e-transfer after you tell me what sizes you would like. Or if you go to All About Me in town, you can just bring your $20 per t-shirt and get them right there.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep, that's great. Thank you. Dan?
Is that the same for the lawn signs? I saw that there's lawn signs available too,
The lawn signs are available through the Lions Club.
through the Lions Club? Okay.
Yes, they are. Mhm.
So and the members of the Lions Club have the signs?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff's page that was referred to a minute ago is a Facebook page on Arthur, so it's called Arthur 150 on Facebook.
Oh, nice.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
I wanted to let you all know that we have a spot for you to sit in the parade. And it will be, there are two teams of horses that will be at the Musashi parking lot. And you will be driven, and that will be near the end of the parade. So at around 3:15, 3:30 is when that group would join in the parade route. Parade route is done, and that will be given out tonight at our 1:50 meeting at the chamber office at 7 this evening.
Okay,
You're all
That's great.
invited to be in the parade.
thank you very much for that.
Welcome.
Any other questions?
The 11 o'clock will be the opening ceremony. So again, I hope that if not all of you, some of you can attend that. And then wondering about the trails. I was speaking with Jack Benham this morning, and I understand the river trail is in excellent shape, but the trail that runs over to Grand Valley is referred to as the rail trail, and perhaps it needs a little bit of grooming for those coming to visit for the weekend.
Okay,
But great cooperation from Dan Farley. He's been great helping us out.
okay. So I'm sure there's lots more to do, and thank you for all that you've been doing so far. Looking forward to some celebration. After a couple of years of being cooped up at home all the time, it would be nice to get out and celebrate. So thank you to all of you who are working, giving your time to make this such a wonderful event. Looking forward to it, and hope somebody's looking after the weather too.
That's right. Well, together we're going to try and pull off a great party for everyone to enjoy safely.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add at this point, Faye?
I don't think so. We have our activities pretty much to the point where we're going to be putting it down and have a schedule of events, so that, and Jeff is kindly putting that up every day or two. And soon it will be all finalized as far as our meet and greet and what's happening at what time and where. And we'll have excellent directional signage for everyone for those 3 days as well.
Okay.
There will be a center spread in the Wellington Advertiser, and that will come out mid-June, and it will be a pullout as well. So that will be extra advertising, and all around the outside of the schedule of events, there will be colored ads supporting and sending out congratulations. So that'll go out to about 40,000 all of the county.
Okay. Sounds really good.
Well,
Any
we thank
other-
you again for the support.
Well, thank you for all you're doing and all the efforts you're putting into this.
Okay.
Any final questions or comments from council?
It's
Okay,
likely going to
I'm-
be here sooner than later, and yeah, looking forward to it. And I know there's a lot of work already gone into it, and I know there's a lot of more work that's going to go into it. And I'd like to hear, Faye, from you that the whole community, service clubs, and everyone is working together to make this a great event.
They are. We're very pleased with their receptiveness. Very pleased.
Great. Okay. And thank you for taking the time to come and give us an update. We'll stay tuned. I'm sure there'll be more information needs to be shared between now and then. So again, thanks very much.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Okay. We have another presentation this afternoon. We have Sarah Wilhelm from the County of Wellington with regard to the county official plan review draft land needs assessment. So welcome, Sarah. Whenever you're ready, we'll let you have the floor.
Okay, thank you so much. It's nice to hear about your plans. That's kind of what communities are all about, isn't it? So I'm here to talk about the land needs assessment. We were back before council in February, and since then, I just wanted to let you know that we've had county council approve in principle the phase 1 work. And so there were no changes to the population and growth forecast for Wellington North. So we're still looking at that increase of about 7,800 people over the next 30 years, bringing you up to over 20,000 people in 2051. And then an increase in jobs of 3,200. And that's over the same 30-year period. So I've been asked to give a high-level overview of the staff report today. And there's a very detailed technical report that is associated with that. And it was prepared by Watson and Associates. So broadly speaking, a land needs assessment is a process to translate the projected number of people and the number of jobs into an amount of land that's needed to deliver that growth. It's done by a methodology that's dictated by the province, and growth is distributed amongst 3 different areas: the built up area, designated Greenfield area, and rural area. And Wellington North, of course, has been very proactive and forward thinking and planning for growth with your community growth plan. So that's been very helpful for us. And there are a number of recommendations within the report that we've certainly been following, and we're noted for future review through the process that we're going through now, the municipal comprehensive review, and that this is the review to implement the provincial growth plan. And so I'll move into the key findings on page 3 of your agenda. The intensification target, as recommended, has been a 15% target, which is an average measured across the county. And that would occur again within the built up areas of our urban centers. What that means for Wellington North is actually a forecast for 20%. Being that it's an average, Watson believes that 20% is achievable in both Wellington North and Center Wellington. And what this will look like is an average rate of about 19 units per year in both Mount Forest and Arthur, generally evenly split. And there's a modest forecast for additional residential units as well. It's a bit difficult to know how many will occur and what the uptake will be, but we'll continue monitoring that. And then in your community growth plan, we noticed that there were higher targets that were recommended, reaching a 30% by 2031 and 40% in the up to 2041. So certainly if that's something that you can achieve here in Wellington North, the target's a minimum, so we'd certainly be happy to see you exceed them. The Greenfield area density target is planned to be retained at that 40 people and jobs per hectare across Wellington. And that target is consistent with what's shown in your community growth plan. Next, I was going to move into the employment area conversions, and Mayor Lennox, I can do a high level overview, or I can talk a little bit about each of the conversion sites if you'd like. Wanted to give you that option.
Maybe let's start with the high level overview, and maybe we need to get into some of the details. Sorry to be maybe redundant, but I think maybe that might set the stage.
Okay, I don't want to talk too much, so so the provincial growth plan requires the county to designate and protect employment areas, and it's very difficult to designate and retain employment lands. So conversion of employment lands to non-employment uses like residential or commercial uses may only be permitted through this MCR process that we're undertaking. The province does set some requirements or criteria for how to deal with this type of request. And those criteria were considered together with local criteria that we developed with Watson. So broadly speaking, then there were 3 sites that were reviewed in Wellington North. One was the bowling alley in Mount Forest, and then the area around the high school in Mount Forest, and the North Arthur development site on Eliza Street in Arthur. In terms of where things ended up, generally speaking, the recommendation was to keep those sites as employment, with the exception of a 5-acre portion of the site around the high school to the east that would be appropriate for commercial or mixed use. And we know from your community growth plan that the recommendation was to consider conversions of the last two sites through the MCR. The community growth plan didn't evaluate the sites against any criteria. But overall, Watson is recommending that any need for residential development land be met through first and solely through redesignating future development lands rather than converting industrial lands to non-industrial uses. We have received comments on the phase 2 report from representatives of both of those two properties. And we've provided those to Watson and Associates for their review, and we'll of course be reviewing those comments as well. The comment cutoff was just last Tuesday, so we'll still be working through those comments. And then I'll just continue through the remainder of the report. The last 2 pages of the report are dealing, well, sorry, first I should start by saying there were no changes or surprises since we were last before council in February. There's no need for urban expansions identified, but we're back to Arthur needing to use about 30% of its future development land and 100% of the industrial lands that are currently designated. And then Mount Forest needs about 65% of the future development land and 60% lands. So now, sorry, moving into next steps, we'll, as I said, continue reviewing the comments that we've received. And phase 2 involvement, it will be key to North. We will be at that time looking at more specifics of the redesignation of future development lands, looking at location options for excess lands. And at this point, we're still in the process of developing the work plan for phase 3 and hoping to initiate some of that work in the summer. And I guess to end this, we'll look forward to continuing to work with council and your staff. And I'm excited that you're picking up the, your 2.0 on your community growth plan. I think all of this will fit together quite nicely. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Now, after I asked you to do the general overview, I'm going to ask you to go back and deal with a couple of questions.
Okay, sure.
Particularly around the ones, one in Arthur and one in Mount Forest that were addressed in the community growth plan, and through your analysis, at this point are seeing industrial in both cases.
Yes.
So,
5 acres.
So just let me understand the process a little bit better. You mentioned that this needs to be done through the MCR process. So even though you're not recommending redesignating them today, they could be. Could they be redesignated? 2 years from now, or when would the next opportunity be that they could be redesignated?
Right. That's a great question. I can only speak to the policies of today. Who knows what could change in the future, but the way that it is now, it would have to be through the next time we do another MCR. So generally speaking, we would look to do those every 5 years, but I wouldn't mark that on the calendar just yet because we still haven't finished this one. But we're still required to do them on a regular basis.
Okay, so the current landowners in both cases have reached out expressing their disappointment with the recommendations. Just want to understand the process that they would need to follow if they want to pursue this, so they could wait for the next review, but in between reviews there's nothing further they can do if this is the accepted recommendation.
I apologize. There's another option for some conversion outside of the municipal comprehensive review. but it would have to be based on need. And I guess my caution would be if it were to follow on the heels of this municipal comprehensive review, I'm not sure that anything would really change in terms of what was being looked at. The province has committed to reviewing the growth forecasts every 5 years. So if there's something that significant like that that were to change, that might be more of a game changer, I guess I would say.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions for Sarah? Mike?
Mayor Lennox, if there aren't any other questions from council, Sarah, just and this kind of relates to, I think, a little bit what Mayor Lennox was speaking to. In this update, you're speaking about the conversion requests, the 3 conversion requests, and I think you touched on it, and I just wanted to clarify, or hope to clarify, as it relates to the other applications. That's probably not the right term. I think we received a total of 8 in Arthur and 3 in Mount Forest as it relates to redesignation as opposed to conversion. What do those get addressed as part of phase 2 as well? So those landowners will hear about the recommendations associated with those redesignations as part of phase 2, or does that come later? Just from a, I guess, from a process standpoint, because I think some of those landowners are reaching out to our council too to find out, status and what's going on with those requests.
Of course, I can understand why. So you're talking about going from future development to residential or highway. Yeah, okay. So the intention would be for those to be dealt with as part of phase 3. And so that'll be a bundle. And we just spoke at Puslinch Council last week. Every municipality is unique. And I think, Puslinch on the rural side has a very unique set of circumstances, and Wellington North as well, because of the FD land and excess land, has a unique situation. So we'll definitely want to be working closely with you to make sure that we can customize how we engage with your community in a way that makes sense. So we're very able to do that and interested in doing that. Yeah, hopefully that helps. And Mike, maybe you wouldn't be asking this question. I hope you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, but I know the annexation lands that has come up from time to time. It doesn't fit very well into a process yet. But we have talked about one way to keep it on our radar would be to incorporate it into our land inventories, even though it doesn't technically have any status, but we don't want to lose sight of it. And so that was one solution that we were talking about in the office, is to insert it into the employment industry so that we carry it along and are aware of how big it is and where it is. So I just wanted to let you know about that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Sarah? Okay, I'm not seeing any more. So thank you, Sarah, for the update. This process continues.
It sure does. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sarah.
Okay, next we have to recess to deal with some planning matters. So I have a recommendation here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North recess the May 9th, 2022 regular meeting of council for the purpose of holding a public meeting under the Planning Act. This is for Clayton and Allison Robertson, minor variance, G&L White Farms zoning amendment, housekeeping zoning amendment, and Tony Pillar zoning amendment. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa. All those in favor? That's carried. We are recessed from our council meeting. We'll switch over first to Committee of Adjustment. And I will call a Committee of Adjustment meeting for May the 9th to order. and ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest in regard to this application A10/22 for Clayton and Allison Robertson. I don't have anything to declare. Councillor Yake,
No.
Councillor Burke,
No.
Councillor Hearn,
No.
Councillor McCabe. I'm going to assume that's a no, Steve, because you're
Sorry,
muted.
I am done, Mayor.
Okay, thanks. So first we'll deal with the minutes of the previous Committee of Adjustment meeting, which was held April 11th. And the recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes of April 11th, 2022, application A0H/22 be adopted as presented. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Our application for today, A10/22 for Clayton and Allison Robertson. Location of the subject land is described as Egremont EGR Concession 1, Division 1, Part Lot 31, Registered Plan 17R387, Part 2, and it's municipally known as 391055 Gray Road 109, Mount Forest. The subject land is approximately 19.9 hectares in size, and the location of the property is shown on the map in your package. Purpose and effect of the application is to provide relief from the zoning bylaws 66-01, specifically section 6.8A, to facilitate the construction of a shop and office with private well and septic within the urban area of Mount Forest. Other variances may be considered where deemed appropriate. How was notice given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to applicable property owners within 60 meters of the property, as well as to the agencies. Signage was posted on the property on April 14th, 2022.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, can you give us an update on this one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this application for minor variance is to provide relief from section 6.8 of the zoning bylaw in order to construct an office and a shop for the proposed landscaping business on private well and septic. So the zoning bylaw requires new development within urban areas to be serviced by municipal sewage collection and water supply. However, at this time, municipal services are not available in front of this lot, and they're not anticipated anytime in the near future. So there's also, on a side note, there's also a holding on this property, which will be coming forward at a later council meeting to remove that. But we're just looking at the minor variance application first. So if this gets approved tonight, then we will come back at a later meeting to request to remove the holding on this. But again, today we're just looking at allowing the new building on private well and septic in the urban area of Mount Forest. And we have no concerns with the proposed minor variance to allow for this new development.
Okay, thank you. Has any further correspondence been received in respect to this application?
Nothing that isn't listed on the agenda, no.
Okay, thank you. Any persons wishing to be notified of the decision must submit a written request to the Secretary Treasurer. And with that, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments. Do we have anybody from the public registered to speak on this application?
Mr. Robertson had indicated he would be on the meeting, but he's not. I have someone with their hand up who didn't register to speak. I'm just going to see if she wants to speak to this application. Where'd she go? Michaela, here's, you had your hand up. Are you here to speak to this matter?
You're unmuted. You can talk.
Yes, it's Clayton Robertson, actually.
Okay, sorry. Okay, just a sec. I'm gonna move you into the meeting then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you're with us. We can't see you, but we can hear you. Where are you? There you go.
Oh, hi, how are you?
Good, welcome. Yeah, the floor is yours if you would like to make any comments in regard to this application.
No, I was just hoping everything was gonna be okay, and if there were any issues or concerns. Jessica mentioned that there was going to be another amendment required for the holding provision.
service.
Yeah, at a later date, but we had to get this one sort of squared away first, I believe.
Right, okay. Okay, we'll go to any members of the committee have any questions or comments in regard to this application? Steve?
I just think it's good to see somewhat local, even though they're out of Southgate, but they're going to be in the north end of Mount Forest. It's a great company, and it's nice to see them expanding and putting even bigger roots down. So well done, and look forward to the building and the work that they're going to be doing in the future here.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, then we'll go
Mayor
to.
Lennox?
There's one, sorry, Mayor.
Yes.
Mayor Lennox, just a point of clarification that I wanted to cover with, and hopefully Jessica can maybe address this. It's clear at this point that there's no water sewer servicing in the near horizon for this particular application. Is that something the committee could consider as part of their decision as it relates to the minor variance or removal of the hold, that if and when services become available, the property owner would need to connect?
Through you, Chair, we could include that on tonight's decision, that if at some point in the future that services are available, that they connect. The holding removal might be a little difficult because it is just looking at the holding removal, which doesn't relate to the services. So if that was going to be an option, I would say definitely move forward with that tonight rather than at the holding removal stage.
Thanks, Jessica. I appreciate that. I just, from the committee standpoint, this, as the report indicates, this is within the industrial zone per the official plan. So at some point in the future, this council may be part of servicing that entire area. So it's just something to consider. Not suggesting that it will happen in the near future, but it is something that may happen.
Okay. So I'll go back to the committee. Is this a condition you'd like to impose with this application? Dan, go ahead.
I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. It's certainly going to be down the road and in the future before services are available. But I think if we get out that far, I think we should have it in there for sure.
Okay. Anybody else like to amend this with that condition? Karen, do you have a process?
I do, but I'll wait till you're done. Sorry.
Okay. Steve, did I see your hand?
Yeah, thanks. And through you, Mayor, like does this make it easier, Jessica, or is it something that we could do if that ever, if the infrastructure ever gets out that far, or is it like, is it saving a step, I suppose, if we do it now kind of thing?
Yeah, it would be saving a step, and it would be catching any, if say the current owners sell it in the future or anything. I know. Yeah, I think that this would be probably a good option for tonight if that was gonna go through. Like I don't see any concerns with it going through at a later date. Again, today is focusing on that, so it might be good to put it through with that. It's giving the municipality the opportunity to have that requirement. And again, yeah, the holding removal, we're not looking at the servicing aspect of it. The only other option I could maybe think of is it would be required through site plan approval to connect to it would be, this development would be most likely required to go through site plan approval. I don't know if we would want to look at requiring them at that stage. I see Darren's jumped on here too.
Darren?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox, and that's right, Jessica. A site-specific condition could be put in the site plan agreement. That's something that's registered on title and can move through the property easily if there's a sale or multiple sales. A minor variance tied to servicing this building now might be lost in 10 or 15 years, or nobody will be looking there for an answer.
Okay. Clayton.
Yeah, just a quick question. If we put a septic and well in now for the building, we do have an office there, but there's not really staff working in the office. It's only for office for my son and myself. There's no receptionist or employees there during the day. It's just basically a mechanic shop for working on our equipment, and then a large sort of warehouse building to store our equipment through the winter and loading up and so forth. So we're not going to be using this site. It's just sort of a jumping off point every morning. There's not employees working there on a daily basis. How would that change for us in the future for water and sewage requirements if we had to hook on? Would we need to be changing? That's what my question is.
So if council wants to impose this condition, or it gets included in the site plan approval, it would mean that when services became available, there'd be an expectation that you would decommission the well and septic and connect to the municipal services.
Is there any thoughts on the timeline of this process taking place?
I think given the distance from current services right now, it would be quite a number of years before we would get there.
What you're saying is it wouldn't be my problem.
Maybe your son's.
Yeah, because it's my son that's taking over the business. This is the whole purpose of this endeavor here. So, yeah, I just I hate paying for something twice if that's what I'm getting at here.
Right. No, we understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just need to clarify some process stuff here. So we've thrown this issue up, and normally when we do approve developments like this that are inside the urban boundary, the expectation is that when services become available, if they become available, there'd be an expectation to connect. That's pretty routine for us. The question is, what's the best process to incorporate that wish? I'm not sure who to ask. Karen?
I would concur with Darren. If we put this in a signed notice of decision, these get filed and there's a retention period on them. It may be permanent, I don't know, but it's really, really hard in 5 or 20 years to go back and find this decision, where if you put it in a site plan, it's registered on title. All future purchasers would have notice of it. And you know, the lawyer then that searches the title would write to us and ask if that had been done. Otherwise, you know, Mr. Robertson's son has it, then his grandson has it, and then we time to hook up, and we can't find it.
Okay, so I think what you're saying is that we don't need to do an additional condition today, but we do need to provide direction to staff to include that in the site plan, if that's the way we wish to go. Any other councillors want to weigh in on this, for or against? Lisa, go ahead.
I don't really have anything to add, except that it seems to be proactive and forward thinking versus reactive, and I'm very pro planning, and having it attached to the title, you know, is full disclosure in the future. So I would support that.
Okay. So I think what we're getting to is direction to staff to include that in the site plan process going forward. Steve?
Just thank you, Mayor, and just through you, just going back to Clayton's point, I like that we're maybe saving a step here But that doesn't necessarily mean he's obligated, or sorry, that it's not his problem in the future. Like, did he or whoever owns it after that, do they necessarily have to hook up? To go back to what he said about paying for it twice. I know there's the expectation. I'm just wanting to make sure it's completely clear.
Okay, Mike?
Through you, Mayor Lennox, the reason this gets raised, or I believe should be raised, is because our official plan says, and part of the reason this application is before committee, if you're within the urban boundary, you connect to services. That's what it says. We don't have services there right now, but at some point in the future, we may. So if we start saying, yes, you have to connect to everybody else, but because we don't have services out there now, and we're going to say yes, but not unless we want you to. I think the idea is, and Mr. Robertson makes a good point, he doesn't want to pay for things twice. The municipality doesn't want to pay to extend services unless we're going to get everybody connected to those services. We run into a lot of problems historically where we've run water and wastewater lines in front of properties that have a well and septic, and we don't have them connect. And then 20 years later, they run into problems. Then we're incurring costs to connect them when they should have been connected at the time the services are there. So and this is not imminent. It absolutely is not imminent. But it does provide provisions and clarity for staff that if services get extended out there, all the property owners and properties are expected to be connected. And I just raised it as part of the conversation. Mayor Lennox's comment was there's an expectation. I think it needs to be more clear than just an expectation. That's my opinion. It needs to be, yes, you will connect if services are extended out there. That's a committee decision and a council decision, but that's my suggestion and the reason for raising the conversation.
Lisa?
It could be a real benefit to him too, to be able to connect. And I mean, I don't want to, hypothesize or anything like that, but I kind of think in the future, your septic and well that you're going to install will probably be at the end of life anyway. And it might actually be cheaper or a better business decision to want to be hooked up to our services anyway. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay, Clayton?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hook up right now because it would help us out with the fire suppression water problem we're having as well. Because there's no hydrants around. So we have to dig a pond for this fire water requirements as well on top of this. So when we add that up and a well and a septic, we have to do a lot of things because those services aren't there for us to use, correct? So again, talking about double dipping on it, I understand the process and I get what you're saying, that if some people hook up and some people don't, you have to have some continuity here, but you see where we're coming from with this. But I agree, in the future, if it runs through, I mean, I guess we just hook up and that's it, but this could be a long time down in the future.
Yeah. Okay. So before I get to the decision, and I'm just going to read it as it was presented in the agenda, is everybody comfortable with giving direction to staff around the site plan?
Yep, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'll read the decision then. That the minor variance applied for in application A10/22 for the property described as Egremont EGR Concession 1 Division 1 Part Lot 31 Registered Plan 17R 387 Part 2 and municipally known as 391055 Gray Road 109 Mount Forest to provide the following relief. Number one, that relief from section 6.8 A to facilitate the construction of a shop office building on private well and septic within the urban area of Mount Forest be allowed. All those in favor? That's approved. Thank you very much. And that's all for our Committee of Adjustment. So we'll adjourn the Committee of Adjustment. And the recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment meeting of May 9th, 2022 be adjourned at 2:54 p.m. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we're adjourned from the Committee of Adjustment meeting. We'll move on to the public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment. We have 3 applications. And I'll call the public meeting to order, and we'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest in regard to any of these applications. Zoning bylaw amendment 24/21, 08/22, and 09/22. I have none to declare. Councillor McCabe?
I have none, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burke?
No.
Councillor Hearn?
No.
Councillor Yake?
No.
Okay, so we'll start with the zoning bylaw amendment 24/21. This is G&L White Farms. The land subject to proposed amendment is part of the property described as part of lot 23, concession B, Peel, parts 1 and 8, plan 61R-10173, and known municipally as 7970 Wellington Road 12, Township of Wellington North. The subject land is 3.68 hectares in size and is located along the east side of Wellington Road 12 in the southwesterly portion of the property. The location is shown on the map in your package. The purpose and effect of the proposed amendment is to rezone the subject land to a site-specific rural industrial to permit a public works garage and public uses. The land is currently zoned agricultural exception 1A-1. How was notice given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to property owners within 120 meters of the property, as well as to applicable agencies, and signage was posted on the property on April 14th.
Okay, thank you. So giving us a presentation today is not a new face to the council, but a new face doing this particular role. So we have Steve Weaver from GSP. Welcome, Steve. If you can give us the rundown on this application, please.
Certainly good to be with you, and thank you for your time today, Mayor Lennox and members of council. So you'll find a copy of my letter in your agenda package, and it provides essentially the same information that you would typically receive through a staff report. GSP Group, as the mayor has noted, has been retained to review and process this zoning bylaw application on behalf of the township, given that the county is involved as an applicant here. So I do have a brief presentation just to provide a bit of an overview of the application and the subject land, as well as the information in our letter. And then I see that the applicant is here represented as well by Dave Aston and Lloyd Grinham from MHBC and Grinham Architects to provide a bit more information as well. Bear with me while I share my screen. Does that come up okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, that's clear.
Okay, so the zoning bylaw amendment that's before you today is for 7970 Wellington Road 12. And as indicated in my letter, the subject property is located just to the south of the Arthur Urban Center along the east side of Wellington Road 12. So the application for rezoning does not apply to the entire subject property, which is outlined in this outer black line, but rather only applies to 3.68 hectares, or about 9 acres, or thereabouts at the southwest limit of the property, approximately here. And as noted by the mayor, the land is currently zoned A1, which is an agricultural exception zone. That exception restricts new livestock facilities in that area because of the proximity to Arthur. Otherwise, it's the same as the typical agricultural zone in terms of the permitted uses, which is predominantly related to farming. There is really a few zones in the zoning bylaw that allow for a public works garage, which is the proposed use of the subject land. However, there's only one that really is applied generally in the rural area, and that's the rural industrial zone, or RIN zone. And the RIN zone does permit a range of things, and some of those things wouldn't normally be permitted in the prime agricultural area. So a site-specific 16 zone is recommended, whereby the RIN 16 zone would limit the permitted uses to essentially the public works yard and other related public buildings, public uses, and accessory uses. Just to give you the lay of the land, again, the location south of Arthur on the east side of the County Road 12. There are some existing dwellings more distant to the north, at least 300 meters plus, as indicated in the applicant's planning report. So not directly adjacent or across the road from the site. So that distance should help to mitigate or avoid any impacts related to the operations that are proposed on the site because of the distance from those existing homes to the north and south. There is, of course, the large Walker Industries composting facility across the road to the west, and the subject land is indicated there in yellow at the south end of the property. So you can see the area is generally characterized by agricultural uses for the most part, with the exception to the composting facility on the west side and a few dwellings to the north and south. A preliminary site plan has been provided by the applicant. There will be a separate site plan application required as well, where a more detailed site plan and supporting plans will be required. However, for the purposes of the zoning application, the basic layout of the site in a preliminary level has been provided. So this is oriented a little off north, just to keep the site oriented to the page a little bit better. Wellington Road 12 is shown over here on the left-hand side of the slide. The driveway would be located approximately in the middle of the frontage, and the building would be sited approximately in the middle of the site, at least in a north-south orientation, a little bit closer to the front than to the back of the property that's proposed. There would be this paved area, again, in the center of the site, with the building centered on that. These dashed lines shown around the building are a fire route that's proposed to go all the way around the building. There would be some parking areas proposed both at the front for visitor parking and for the back for staff parking. There's a larger paving area for movement of works vehicles and some cold storage. Again, this is for road works and other public works facilities and storage. The building itself would be, according to the application, approximately 3,184 square meters. The service bay portion of that is proposed to be a one-story industrial type building with an accessory two-story office at the front in this location. As I say, there'll be a bit more detail about the building and how it might look as part of the site plan application. There is a second phase identified for future potential ambulance garage at the front of the property here as well. The details of that haven't been defined at this point, but there is space being reserved for that secondary building as well. And then an outline has been indicated here for a future stormwater management pond as well. So some of the details around grading, drainage, and stormwater management, those would be established at another level of detail through the site plan application, before some of these details are finalized. So in our letter, we've overviewed the planning context. We've reviewed the application under the PPS and growth plan, as well as the county official plan and the zoning bylaw. And the applicant has submitted a planning justification report as well. And we've summarized some of the key information from that report. We've just briefly highlighted 5 of the policy considerations for this application. So the first is that it's in the prime agricultural area. Within that area, the range of land uses and permitted buildings is very limited, predominantly to farming. However, there are some exceptions made in limited circumstances where there's justification provided that there's no reasonable alternative locations, say on lower priority agricultural land or within a settlement area, or in another place that would minimize or reduce the need to locate in a prime ag area. The basic justification in this case is that the county needs facilities in this part of the county relating to the growth that's expected, and the needs for county works fleet and facilities to service the north part of the county. It's also, I think, a benefit to be located along a county road and some efficiency there to service that. So there are some exceptions contemplated specifically for infrastructure and community facilities in the county official plan, as well as in the PPS that allow for facilities like this, which are related to public works and public roads, to be considered as part of the overall infrastructure that's required to meet the needs of growth and complete communities. Servicing is obviously not available in terms of municipal servicing for this location outside the Arthur Urban Center. So the details of the on-site water and wastewater or septic system would be supplied as part of the site plan and building applications. The applicant has provided some overview of land use compatibility considerations in their planning report as well. And as I mentioned, the key focus of that is just demonstrating that given the distance from the nearest homes along that road, that there are no impacts expected in relation to noise or dust or other potential impacts. A stage 1 archaeological assessment has been submitted with the application. I understand at this time they're not quite complete the stage 2 work yet, which was recommended of the stage 1 report. Basically, the stage 1 assesses the potential for archaeological resources in the area. And if there is some potential, then it recommends that there be some more detailed review, usually comprised of plowing the land and doing a field survey or a pedestrian walk. And so that work is still in progress. And what we've recommended is a holding provision to make sure that, consistent with the PPS and county policies, as well as the ministry requirements, that the archaeological clearance is obtained prior to final approval of the zoning. In other words, an application to lift the holding provision would be required later. And that would also require that there's no site alterations prior to obtaining that archaeological clearance. So there is in your agenda as well today a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. It's bylaw 060/2022. And the map from that bylaw is provided on this slide. It just indicates, again, the area of the site that would be rezoned to the holding zone, rural industrial 16. And that the permitted uses in that zone would be limited to what's listed here for the purposes of permitting the public works garage and related uses. And the holding provision would have to be lifted by council at a later date once the archaeological clearance is obtained. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and there weren't very many comments that came back. However, it was confirmed with the source protection coordinator that the site is partially located within a designated wellhead protection vulnerable area. However, the proposed use is not considered a significant drinking water threat at the edge of the wellhead protection area, as you can see on the map. We did receive a comment, I think just came in today, or was circulated today. The Wellington Federation of Agriculture has noted that, yes, public works facilities can be considered in prime agricultural areas if there are no suitable alternative locations, and provided the need is justified. And here they've noted that, yeah, the need for public works facilities is to maintain the transportation system. However, just on principle that, the WFA never supports the loss of farmland and does not support the rezoning and requests that this facility should be relocated on non-agricultural lands. So just to recap, the proposed rezoning would permit a public works garage operated by the county. It would be on the basis of private services, so well and septic, along the east side of Wellington Road 12. From our review and subject to some of the considerations from tonight's public meeting or today's public meeting, We do think that it's consistent generally with the applicable planning policies. Site plan approval will be required, which again will establish some more of the details that are required prior to actual development of the facility. Archaeological clearance will also be required, and that requirement is proposed to be implemented with a holding zone. And finally, there will be a process of creating the lot as well for this use. It's not part of the current application. As a municipal government, the county would have the ability under an exemption under the Planning Act, I believe, to create the lot without going through a consent through the Committee of Adjustment. It can be done by reference plan. I believe at some point there would be some sign off by the local municipality as well to facilitate that if the zoning and site plan are approved. So I'll stop sharing my screen at this point and would welcome any questions should you have any of me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. We'll go through a couple more items and then we'll come back to any questions that the council may have. So has any further correspondence been received in respect to this application?
From the Wellington Federation of Agriculture that Steve mentioned. That was all, other than what's listed on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. And anyone wishing notice of the decision, the bylaw will be considered at the regular council meeting following this public meeting. Persons wishing notice of the passing of the bylaw must submit a written request. And with that, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments from the applicant and or the public. Anybody do we have anyone registered to speak in this one, Karen?
Yes, we do. Dave Aston is on the line, and as well, Lloyd Grinham is on the line. He's the architect. I don't think he's speaking, but he's here if there are questions.
Okay, so welcome, Dave.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lennox and members of council. Just here really to respond to questions. I have a presentation, but I wouldn't want to spend your time. I think Mr. Weaver did a great job going over what's being proposed and the items that have been considered. And we've had a chance to review the report and have been in dialogue with Mr. Weaver and have no concerns with what's being proposed as far as the zoning and the approach, the use of the holding provision. And we have also started into the process for the site plan consideration to work through the details. So we're here simply this afternoon in support and to answer any questions. And yes, Mr. Grinham, the county's architect, is joining me in case there are any questions as well.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else registered to speak, Karen? Okay, so we'll open it up to council then. Any questions or comments from council? Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, I would fully support what the WFA has said about taking prime ag out. I know this is something that county staff never usually approves, and I mean, right in the report it says it's noted that the submitted application does not include a review of potential alternatives within the Arthur settlement, and I'm pretty sure there's better alternatives and alternatives that wouldn't have the county have to build private septic, private water, and they could hook up to municipal services.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Sherry, go ahead. You're muted, by the way.
Yeah, I just have a question and I've been trying to find it in the report. And I'm not sure who I'll direct this to, maybe to Steve Weaver. There's limitations on the agricultural lands that would be surrounded, that would surround the potential build? And what would those be?
Steve?
Yes, through you, Mayor Lennox, to Councillor Burke. We did consider that. The main limitation that would normally exist for this type of facility, if it were created in a prime ag area and there were agriculturally zoned and designated lands around it, would be that those lands would then have some minimum distance separation or MDS setback expectations for the facility. It would be a type A land use, so similar to a rural industrial use. So not the larger setback distance, but the smaller one. In this case, it's not really a limitation because the land all around the site is already zoned A-1, which says because of the proximity to the Arthur Urban Center, livestock facilities aren't permitted anyways. So there's no immediate new limitation or restriction inherent in this facility on the adjoining lands. It would still be allowed to be used for any type of agriculture that's permitted under the bylaw.
Okay, and if I may, just one
go.
more follow-up. Yeah, I echo the sentiment from WFA that this is the only site that's been presented to us by the county, and never like to see agricultural land taking out of production. However, do understand the need for a facility and just wondered, should this not pass, are there alternative locations to be presented?
Gee, I'm not sure who to direct that one to. Steve Weaver?
I can take a first attempt at that. I will say that had this been something that isn't contemplated in the county official plan and it was a request to exclude the land from the prime ag area, say for a private industry or something like that, there would have been, I think, a greater expectation on a review of alternatives in the settlement area or fully serviced sites or rationale as to why it couldn't be located elsewhere. The unique aspect of this request is that the county, in adopting its official plan, had anticipated that there would need to be this flexibility for their facilities to be located throughout anywhere in the prime ag area. So basically, in adopting their official plan, had set a framework for allowing this without that same kind of rigorous review of alternatives. And it's a very narrow permission in that it's really only public works and facilities that can be considered without doing that full kind of analysis of alternative locations. But it is up to council. It is your zoning bylaw, and if you feel that more information should be supplied in terms of the rationale for not locating it in Arthur or another urban settlement area or somewhere where there's there aren't a lot of areas in the township that aren't prime agricultural land. So if it isn't in a settlement area, chances are it's going to be on prime ag land. But if you feel that there's inadequate information in the application or in our report on the justification for why not in Arthur, for example, that's something you could certainly defer a decision and request more information on that.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hearn and then Councillor Yake. And then you, Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, that's kind of what I take issue with, is that I don't find any real justification within the report for using agricultural land for the works yard. It kind of feels like sometimes it's just ag land is just the low-hanging fruit, and the environment and the food supply can be shoved to the side for convenience. So I would really like to see some better justification personally. I need to sleep at night and I'm not going to, quite frankly.
Okay. Councillor Yake?
Yeah, I guess I mean, recently we've had discussions about, the loss of agricultural land. And, it seems to be, well, it doesn't seem to be, it is an issue. What, I guess to Steve Weaver again, I mean, if it's not supported at this council table, I mean, what is the alternative, and what, where does the county go from there, I guess?
Go ahead, Steve.
Through you, Mayor Lennox, to Councillor Yates. So there would be a couple of options for the county. The county could propose another new location or supply additional information to try and satisfy your expectations in terms of justification of review of alternatives. The other would be they could appeal your refusal, and then it would be referred to the OLT, the Ontario Land Tribunal, and they would consider the merits of the application and the recommendations.
Okay. Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, I gotta kind of hammer back on, I think what I said a little bit earlier, just because the county didn't look at alternatives within the Arthur settlement doesn't mean that there's not any. And I kind of find it a little short-sighted of the county to base this proposal just on one location that's in prime ag, when again, county staff on multiple occasions just in our township alone will not allow stuff to be taken out of prime ag, even given that this is a public building or a municipal building that could be used by the county. That's a real stretch, I think, when they haven't even looked at alternatives within the Arthur area.
Okay. Dave Aston, I saw you had your hand up. Did you have some thoughts to share?
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. I just wanted to comment that in discussions with the county, my understanding is that alternative locations were explored. I don't have the details of all of them, but I do understand that locations were explored, and they weren't deemed feasible for the need for the county. So I just wanted to share that information. It wasn't, this is the site and we're moving forward. My understanding is there were alternatives. And again, I think Mr. Weaver provided a good distinction on this proposal versus say other proposals for different uses, whereby there is official plan policy that would support consideration of this use on prime agricultural lands. I understand the comments and the discussion, but I think it's again, the official plan policy provides some different direction here, and that's what we've been looking at as it relates to the policy framework.
Okay. Mike?
Mayor Lennox, yeah, through you, just to follow up on Mr. Aston's comments, there were conversations with county staff and at the very least with me as it relates to other sites, potential sites. So yeah, nothing formally presented to council. So I just wanted to affirm that, yeah, the county has looked at other sites. One of the things that was highlighted for me is that the proximity to actual county roads was part of the appeal of this location. They're right on County Road 12, pretty easy access to 109. Obviously, don't have to go through the village of Arthur to get to County Road 14, things of that nature. So it wasn't just a single site conversation. They have looked at other sites, and there are reasons that maybe didn't come through in the report from their perspective that highlight the benefits of being right on a county road and in close proximity to county road. So I just wanted to provide that piece and just to reaffirm Mr. Aston's comments that there have been other sites. I don't know, probably the breadth of them, I don't know, but I know there were conversations that involved me as it related to sites potentially within the urban boundary.
Okay. I would just comment too. I mean, this type of application gives me indigestion. You know, I dislike the anything that consumes agricultural land for non-agricultural purposes. But this type of facility is not that easy to locate where it doesn't interfere with other people. I'm sure if you spoke to the people on Farrell Lane and Arthur, they would attest to the fact that they don't really like the sound of the backup beeper from the loader in the middle of the night in the winter because they have to load snow clearing equipment. So there are some considerations around traffic and noise that limit the number of locations where these can be. And it does have access to the county roads network, which is intended to serve. It also is a potential site for a new ambulance facility, which would be located with quick access to major arterial roads in the Arthur area. So I think that's a positive for it. And I guess I just have to take some water with my wine, so to speak, and swallow hard and put up with the fact that agricultural land is being used. We don't, the fact that the composting facility is across the street and there isn't nearby residences to create conflict does have some value for sure. Other questions or comments? Okay. I'm not seeing anything, so we'll move on to our next application. Today, we will be dealing with the zoning bylaw amendment in our regular council agenda following the public meeting. Okay, the owner applicant in this case is Township of Wellington North. This is for some housekeeping amendments. Proposed amendment affects all lands in the Township of Wellington North. The purpose and effect of the proposed amendment is to provide for township-initiated housekeeping amendments to the comprehensive zoning bylaw as itemized below. Please note this is not a complete list and more information can be obtained at the township office. For one, clarifying the general provisions for residential additional dwelling units, ARUs, for both attached and detached ARUs. How was notice given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to the applicable agencies and a notice was placed in the Wellington Advertiser on April 14th, 2022.
Thank you. Jessica, can you give us the report on this one, please?
Yes, thank you. So this is a town-initiated housekeeping amendment to the local zoning bylaw, as indicated, updating for all the lands within the township. So council may recall that accessory dwelling units were introduced to the township zoning bylaw in March of 2021. And then shortly after that, we did, Matt worked on a housekeeping amendment to review the zoning bylaw at that time, at the end of last year, sorry. But the accessory dwelling units weren't, I'd say we probably didn't receive as many applications at the time right away. And now with the continuous use with staff on a day-to-day basis, looking at the additional dwelling units, we're just looking to provide a little bit further clarification with those regulations that were brought in earlier in March of 2021. So this is just a minor housekeeping amendment, little technical things here and there to address those new provisions that were brought in earlier before. And my report contained a chart that outlined all the updates. So if staff have any concerns, they can, or if council have any concerns, then I can try and address those tonight. But we do have, if everything goes good today, then we can bring a bylaw at the following meeting to update these provisions.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. Has any further correspondence been received in respect to this application?
Yeah, we got an email from the Grand River Conservation Authority and they have no concerns with the proposal.
Okay. And that's in addition to the letter from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority.
Correct. It's posted, that's listed on the agenda. Yes.
Okay. Anyone wishing notice of the decision of this bylaw? So persons wishing notice of the passing of the bylaw must submit a written request. And with that, I will open the floor for questions or comments from council. Anybody have any questions or comments? Seems fairly straightforward to me. Okay, if there's nothing further, then we'll move on to our third application. This is zoning bylaw amendment 09/22 for Tony Pillar. Land subject to the proposed amendment is described as concession 3 north part lot. Oh, that's cut off in my writing here. I forget what lot number that is.
Sorry, it's lot, oh, it's cut off here too. Sorry. Just a second.
For
Here, I
lot
thought it was my
11, concession 3.
lot 11.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I thought it was my printer had failed.
Mine too.
And is municipally known as 9230 concession 2. The property is approximately 40 hectares in size. The purpose and effect of the proposed amendment is to rezone the subject lands from an agricultural zone to a site-specific agricultural zone A2. This application is seeking to rezone the retained agricultural portion of the property to prohibit any future residential development. This rezoning is a condition of severance application V44/21 that was granted provisional approval by the Wellington County Land Division Committee. The consent will sever 0.67 hectares of rural residential parcel with existing house and a garage. The vacant 39.8 hectare agricultural parcel would be retained, and additional relief may be considered at this meeting. How are notices given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to property owners within 120 meters, as well as to the applicable agencies, and signage was posted on the property on April 14th, 2022.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, back to you.
Yes, thank you again. This application is for a zoning amendment to prohibit future residential development on the retained agricultural portion of the subject lands. This is also the report that has the updated zoning bylaw that'll be a little different than the one that was attached to my report, where it is just recognizing on the proposed severed parcel reduced interior side yard setback for the existing accessory building. So through the application process, the surveyor submitted an updated sketch, and it outlined the reduced interior side yard setbacks that didn't meet the minimum 3 meters. So we're just looking to recognize that as well tonight in the zoning bylaw. And again, this is a pretty standard application, and county staff have no concerns with the application.
Okay, thank you. Has any further correspondence been received in respect to this application?
Nothing other than what's listed on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. The bylaw will be considered at the regular council meeting following this public meeting. Any persons wishing notice of the passing of the bylaw must submit a written request. And with that, I will open the floor for any questions or comments. Do we have anyone from an applicant or the public to speak to this application, Karen?
We do not.
Okay, so we'll go right on to questions or comments from council. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think this makes sense, and it's actually a good use of prime ag. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we'll move to adjourning the public meeting. And I have a recommendation here that the public meeting of May 9th, 2022 be adjourned at 3:34 p.m. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we're adjourned from our public meeting. We'll switch back to our council meeting. And we have a recommendation here to resume our council meeting. And it's as follows, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North resume the May 9th, 2022 regular meeting of council at 3:34 p.m. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So now we're right into the passing of the bylaws coming out of the public meeting. So the first one is with regard to the G&L White Farms application. And the recommendation is as follows: that bylaw number 60-22 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 66-01 being a zoning bylaw for the Township of Wellington North be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. And this is in regard to part of lot 23, concession B, Peel, parts and 8, plan 61R-10173, and is part of the property with a civic address of 7970 Wellington Road 12, G&L White Farms. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Dan. Any discussion? I would just add too that one of the things we might want to consider with regard to this application is if council decides that they don't wish to support this, you might want to think about where this facility might end up. And is that in the interest of both farmland preservation and in the interest of Wellington North community? So not too far from this location, there is another municipality very close to this part of Wellington North. And this is total speculation on my part, but if an application were to happen outside of our urban boundary where they may not be as concerned about preservation of agricultural land, another location could be found that is still in prime ag. So if we were to not support this, have we really accomplished a whole lot for our residents and for the preservation of farmland? And I just put that out there. It's totally speculative. I recognize that. I just think it might be something that we wish to consider. Lisa?
Yeah, I really do see the benefits of this. I just wish that there was more written justification of it within the report.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Jesus.
We'll now move on to the next one. The recommendation is that bylaw number 59-22 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 66-01 being a zoning bylaw for the Township of Wellington North be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. This in regard to North Park Lot 11, Concession 3, with a civic address of 9230 Concession 2 for Tony Pillar. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa. Any discussion on this one? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to adoption of the minutes of council and public meeting. And we have a recommendation here that the minutes of the special meeting of council held on April 21st, 2022, the regular meeting of council held and the public meeting held on April 25th, 2022 be adopted as circulated. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Dan, seconded by Sherry. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to business arising from previous meetings of council. This is with regard to the discussion and decision regarding a feasibility study on rehabilitating the existing Mount Forest pool.
Did everyone receive the letter that I emailed out at the beginning of this meeting from Ray Tout?
Okay, do we want to take, why don't we take a 5-minute recess and everybody have a chance to review that. So it's now, sorry, it's 3:39. Let's reconvene at 3:45. Okay. Okay, I see everybody's back. We're at 3:46, so we'll reconvene the council meeting. And we're again talking about the item that was carried over from our last meeting regarding the Mount Forest pool. And I'd like to start by making a few comments myself, since I kind of was responsible for the discussion kicking off. You have, I know you've all received a copy of the letter from the Mount Forest Lions expressing their concerns, and I reached out to the president, Vern Job of the Lions Club, to express my apologies. It was when I brought the issue up of addressing the question of what would it cost to rehabilitate the existing pool. It was never my intention for that to represent the view of the Lions Club. That was the result of a conversation that I had with one individual. And so if that was the impression that I gave, then I apologize for that. That certainly was not my intention. My intention was to try to prepare council for the inevitable questions around this sort of thing that will come. And I did find it myself to be very useful to review some of the stuff from the past, particularly the report from 2016 regarding the pool, so both new versus rehabilitation of the old. And I think there's a lot of information in there that certainly arms us well with regard to the costs associated with rehabilitating. It would require basically a new building to accommodate the accessibility needs and the plumbing and mechanical. It would require a significant investment in the pool and other things such that when it was last compared back in 2016, the replacement with new was very close to the cost of rehabilitating the old. We're talking about putting a new pool in a much better location away from busy streets. And you know, that I think is absolutely the thing that we all are wanting to accomplish. I think that the new pool is the desired result for all of council, because of, you know, the numerous deficiencies in the existing pool. I do think we do need to be prepared if people ask that question. And I certainly am better prepared now after reviewing a 6-year-old report. Although I do think, however, that, you know, as the costs of this project have escalated. You know, we done that report in 2016. It referred to $1.5 to $2 million. In our development charges study, we just completed earlier this year, there was an estimate of $3.1 million. Now we're talking about $5.5 to $6 million for this project to replace it. It does create some anxiety about you know, where we go, how do we finance this? So I think really our discussion needs to not focus on looking back, but looking forward to what creative solutions we can come up with to make a new pool happen in Mount Forest without you know, the burden falling too heavily on the taxpayer. I mean, I look at the pool with the estimated cost we have now, which is not finalized because we still have more design process to go through. But, you know, we take off what could be collected from development charges for the pool. We take off what could come from donations. We don't know what that is. If I start looking at, you know, us debentering the balance of that in the traditional way that we have in the past, the potential impact on the taxpayer is pretty staggering. So I do think that for the pool and for other projects that we're facing because of growth coming to our community, we've got some major capital projects ahead. We really need to be creative and thoughtful about how we can finance them while still keeping, you know, the taxpayer in mind. So with that said, I'll open it up for further discussion. Steve?
Sure, and thanks, Andy. And yeah, I think the point that a lot of people maybe missed about having another second look at this report from 2016 is just that, having a look at it again. I hadn't seen it for 6 years and I couldn't find it in my emails, and I wanted to be sure that we're doing the right thing. And I think it's incumbent upon us to be prudent with not only our own tax dollars, but the whole township's tax dollars. So I have no problem having a look at this. I don't think it's feasible going forward. And now I can really actually go and defend that to the public when we go and put the shovels in the ground for the new pool. I had to be absolutely sure. And I'm 100% confident that we're on the right path. And if we had to take a 2-week pause, it was well worth it in my mind. But we do have to find a way to pay for it now, and put our weight behind the fundraising committee and go knock on doors.
Other comments? Sherry, go ahead.
Yes, so I'd just like to say on behalf of the Aquatics Committee, and I'm sure that the Lions Club will be ecstatic that we're not looking at the refurbishing of a new pool or the existing pool, sorry, and that we are moving forward with the new pool. It was quite disheartening to have those conversations with those folks over the last 2 weeks. Some morale has been deflated. Volunteers are quite upset with regards to the discussions because several members of council have been sitting in on those meetings and they knew how excited we were to do that. But I'm glad that everybody had an opportunity to review a lot of the information that has gone on in the last 4 to 6 years to come to the realization that it's not feasible to refurbish the pool. And I think that there are potentially other alternatives to go out. The concepts that we have are just that, they're concepts. Does it need to be made out of concrete? We don't know that because we've waited for so long for these concepts to come forward that it's probably going to be another 2 years before we have any real conceptual design that we could probably take to an RFP. So as I say, I don't want to belabor the point too much. I'm just glad that the work that has been done so far has not gone to waste, because that would be a huge disregard to the taxpayers' dollars.
Other questions or comments? Dan, go ahead.
Well, I'm certainly glad that I think have come to our senses on this issue. I know it, it's always maybe good to look back and see what maybe we could have done different. But like I said before, that question about refurbishing, I'm sure was probably the first question that committee asked themselves. And when they decided that that wasn't the route that either they wanted to go or that was the right way to go, they made the decision to move forward, and they put a lot of time and a lot of effort into this project. And I'm happy to see this starting to, I hope that this will move forward with some expediency.
Other questions, comments? I would just add, though, that, I think we all agree this is the right solution. I do think the challenge before us around how to pay for it is a major, significant challenge. If, like I said, I crunched the numbers. If we were to approach this way that we normally do, and debenture the balance of what we don't have immediately from other sources, that could have, about a 4% increase in property tax before we take care of anything else. To me, that's way out of line. So whether we go for grant funding or what we do here, I think needs to be having some serious discussion, because boy, oh boy, this is a huge bill, and we need to figure out a way to pay for it that will be palatable to the people that pay the freight on this. So I do think it's a major challenge that we can't shy away from. This needs to be part of our discussions as we move forward, because this is a huge, huge issue around this project. Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to say that, as we know, to apply for grants, you pretty much have to have a shovel-ready project. So we're just one step closer to be able to look at those avenues for funding, because we have conceptual designs. We have, we're going to review the some of the public involvement, engagement through the surveys that ended on the 30th of April. So I think those are all great discussions that we're going to have, but it's not something that the Aquatics Committee hasn't thought of. But it's getting to that step. And as I say, we're one step closer to be able to look at those things and ask staff where potentially some of those funds can be garnered.
Yeah, I totally agree, Councilor Burke, that we do need a shovel-ready project to go and apply for some grant funding. And we've invested some dollars to come up with that design. And we certainly need to follow that process through to its conclusion, including the public engagement, to get to a design and even where we can start asking questions about, how did we get to $5 million? This is a huge sum. And are there alternatives that we could look at? But we have to do this keeping in mind that financing it is the challenge before us, and we have to start having those discussions about what kind of things we are comfortable with on a project like this going forward. Any other questions or comments? Okay. We didn't have a particular resolution with regard to that discussion, but so I don't have anything to call the question on at this moment in time. But I'm not sure what the best process is with regard to talking about how we finance it, but I think it's certainly something that needs to come sooner rather than later. Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, through process is because I've went through a lot of documentation, and there's been a lot of resolutions made and recommendations made and passed both by council and committee. I know one of the questions that I'm going to be asked as chair of the Aquatics Committee is this conversation now endorsing the fact that we are going to move forward with the Mount Forest pool? But, and I don't like to use but, are we going to look at avenues on how to fundraise it? Is that the next step?
I can't answer that question directly, Councillor Burke. I think that's up to council as a whole to have that discussion. But I do think that we need to figure out how we can do it, and that's a major challenge. I see Councillor McCabe had his hand up. Maybe he's got the answer to that question.
Yeah, no, I do not have the answer for that, but and I won't speak for council, but I think as rec chair, that's what I'll be pushing for, is obviously the support of the new pool. But I got to go back to say, like, we had to make sure we were doing the right thing with the people's money, and with the fundraising, we have to get targets set. We have to get concepts set after the public consultation, and get down to it. And I'm pretty sure, again, not speaking for all the council, but I'm pretty sure we're all behind this new the new pool construction. It's just a matter of paying for it.
Councillor Yates.
So moving forward, can we, and I know it's a little maybe tougher since we don't have a director of finance in place, but can we ask staff to start to put together ideas or ways of how we will be able to finance this and or pay for it, so that we can have that discussion? I mean, the sooner we get talking about this, and the sooner we get it on the table, the sooner we're going to be able to hopefully come up with the way to do it. So I'd like to see staff, and maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit here because we don't have a finance director, but I think we do need to try to come up with something that we can start to look at and discuss.
Matt?
Yep, through you, Mayor Lennox. The way I would see this project rolling out is the survey results are kind of coming to committee tomorrow, but really they're coming to committee from a raw data standpoint. Staff are still going to need to take that data in and kind of try to interpret it and then come up with a preferred design concept, at which point we'll be able to get, again, a slightly better estimate on what that looks like. But to Councillor Yates' point, from a staff standpoint, determining finance in the immediate future, being the next couple months, is going to be very, very, very challenging from a staff standpoint without a director of finance in hand. But certainly, I think it sounds like what I'm hearing from council is to proceed with getting to that preferred design concept, which will need to be approved by the Recreation, Parks and Leisure Committee. And at that point, we'll have a more defined sort of understanding of where we're at with the pool project. I would just offer that.
And I think, this gives us an opportunity too to think about what things that we might recommend or we might be comfortable with, whether that be, applying for provincial or federal grants, additional fundraising opportunities, bundling a project like this with some others that we're working on, and going to a longer term financing arrangement, because we do have other big projects that are slated over the next 4 or 5 years, and figuring out how we can put it all together and keep it manageable for the taxpayer is certainly going to be a challenge for the coming years. Dan?
But don't we need to start having those discussions? I think the discussion with the design should work hand in hand with the way we're going to finance it. And we can't, the longer we put it off, the longer it's going to take, the more expensive it's going to be. So I just think we need to, we need to work hand in hand with the design, final design, and the way it's going to be paid for.
I couldn't agree with you more, Dan. I think that absolutely we do, but we do have, some staff shortages that are a reality as well.
I understand that, but we can't, we can't use that as an excuse not to move forward with things, projects.
Well, I think there's responsibility on us as council too, to set the stage for what our expectations are. And we really haven't had this discussion around this project. This is not like, a roads rehabilitation project. This is something different. And how we choose to finance it needs to come from this table. Staff can pull together the numbers, but we need to set the stage for what do we think is possible around some of these things. What do we think that, what are people prepared to accommodate? So, we can have that discussion. Well, we can do it today from that perspective to some extent, but we might need some time to think about it too. Sherry, go ahead.
So with regards to funding, would it be unrealistic for staff to bring forward even some options to help, depending on what funding they think may be out there, to help fundraise or to help fund this project for the bricks and mortar? Like, I just think that there needs to be more of a commitment from council for the folks that are helping to volunteer to fundraise. I mean, they've been deflated over the last 2 weeks. This isn't the first time by council. They're committed to the next 2 fundraisers that they've got on the books, but that's only based on this conversation today. And it seems like council is generally supportive of the pool. We just need to figure out fundraising. Well, I don't want, and that the committee doesn't want, council to sit on it for another 2 years, and we can use staffing shortages and COVID as, a crutch, but we need to move on.
Yeah, I agree with you, Councillor Burke. I mean, I'm frustrated. I've been raising this issue the last 2 meetings we've had around this issue of how do we finance it, and we really haven't gotten any further with that discussion. I mean, there probably isn't a whole lot of opportunities right today in terms of federal provincial grant funding, but that doesn't mean there won't be in the future. Is that our expectation? I don't know what council's expectation is. It certainly is something that I would like to consider in terms of grant funding. But are there other things that we can do? What else can we do? I don't even know what the expectation of the fundraising committee is to what they expect to be able to raise. I'd love to know that. So where do we start? We got to get started somewhere. Go ahead, Sherry.
So the expectation has always been, and it's in the mandate, and there was also I believe it was a resolution passed, that we would be charged with enhancements. So whatever those enhancements are, That is the expectation that the committee understands that they would be fundraising for. What does that look like? Well, we don't know exactly because there's been some discussion about some of the amenities. And again, it goes back to the design review on the concepts from the public engagement. But as long as we're going to continue to move forward and there is a commitment to continue to move forward, I think the folks that have been volunteering over the last 4 years will continue to move forward.
Mike?
So we've started down the conversation, Mayor Lennox, so I'll maybe try to provide a little bit staff perspective. So the enhancements piece, let's say that's $500,000. That'd probably be all we're talking about as a fundraising goal. That's fine if that's the intent of the fundraising, that it's 500,000, at least $5 million, probably more than that, but $5 million. The staff's initial assessment would be to the debenture because there's no guarantees around grants. There's nothing imminent. There's nothing currently in the works as it relates to a pool grant. They don't exist right now, and they won't exist until after the election, and probably won't exist significantly longer than that. That's my assumption. I don't know what will happen with the provincial election. None of us necessarily does. So a $5 million debenture, you're looking at annual payments of in and around $400,000 a year. Our tax levy is just over 8 million. So yeah, you're looking at a fairly significant increase to offset that impact if that's what we're looking at. If the intent of council or the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee is to ask the fundraising committee to raise more than just for the enhancements, then that needs to be new direction to that committee. The other thing that is unclear at this point for everybody involved is naming rights, things that are particular to the building. Are those part of the enhancement fundraising, or are those part of building a new pool? And that's never been clarified either. So that needs to be clarified. And that's not a staff job, that's a council job. You guys need to provide that clarity, because I've heard different opinions around that from the 5 members of council. So that needs to be hashed out in terms of who's getting what pots of dollars. And yeah, if this is the #1 priority for grant applications, that's great. But yet staff would like to have that in our pocket as well, that we know that that's the next fundraising, the next grant application that comes out from the province or the feds will be specific to the Mount Forest pool. And that's the type of direction that staff would really like. And that needs to come from council. We can crunch numbers to Councillor Yake's point. It's $400,000 a year for a debenture, a 25-year debenture of $5 million. Do we want to tie up $5 million of our borrowing capacity for the Mount Forest pool? That's a tough question to answer right now, but I'm just trying to give you in terms of the overall dollar numbers. But I do think there are specific questions that council needs to address. One is the naming rights piece. Is that part of the enhancement fundraising, or is that for the building? And is this the #1 priority project for grant applications going forward?
Steve, go ahead.
Thanks. Well, I know we have some of the numbers crunched already for some of the amenities, and I wondered, does it matter what concept the public comes back with, and then after council sits at this table and chats, does it really matter what concept is picked if there is a certain amount of amenities that we already know the numbers of picked for the new pool? In my opinion, it doesn't. I think if they needed a climbing wall and it's $5,000, or I can't remember the number off the top of my head, then so be it. Doesn't matter what concept it goes into. And then going to what Mike just said, I would say we leave the fundraising or the amenities to the fundraising team, like Sherry has pointed out. And if there are naming rights that garner X amount of dollars, I think that's got to go into the capital price of the building.
Okay. You know, I think it's really productive that we're starting to have this conversation. I think we need to continue this conversation. Should we be continuing this as something in our upcoming meeting, our next meeting, until we kind of start hashing some of this stuff out? Mike has suggested a few questions. Is council comfortable with carrying this item over into the agenda for our next meeting and we start talking about some of these issues? Give me something, somebody. Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I want to keep the conversation going so that we can get on with it. That's just my opinion. I mean, the frustration level is ridiculous. And we need to move forward. And, you know, I think personally, on the naming rights portion of it, I think that's a totally separate conversation, because we don't know until we formally go ask the Lions Club how much money they're going to contribute. And I would suspect that their money, they're going to want to have as fundraising dollars. So to the point of, if we raise 500,000, and that's all we need to raise, but we raise more than that, well, then of course we're not going to look to see where we can add another sunshade or bench. I mean, we also have to look at that this facility also needs to be landscaped. So right now we're just talking about amenities for the interior portion of it. The committee's already talked about, you know, doing some landscaping amenities such as benches or a pathway like we have at both splash pads in Mount Forest and Arthur. So to say that we're only going to raise 500,000, that might not be the case, but it's taken us so long to get to this point that nobody wants to talk about anything else until we know what we're doing.
Okay. So is everybody okay with carrying this over to the next meeting till we have to continue this discussion? Steve?
Yeah, and I think with our meeting tomorrow with the ad hoc committee and the rec park and leisure that's going on tomorrow at 6:30, I think that'll will help out as well and keep the momentum going and the conversation. So I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Lisa?
Yeah, I'm fine with moving it forward and discussing it at our next meeting and continuing.
Okay. So Mike, can you write down those list of things you listed off there? We can use that as a primer for discussion next time around, please.
We'll put them in the minutes.
Yeah, I would suggest the council consider this being a standing item on agendas for the foreseeable future. And yeah, I'm happy to try to put together what I think are key decision points that need to be discussed, but decisions are going to have to, conversation is great. I'm not trying to minimize that, but decisions are going to have to be made in order for it to move forward. Not just having it conversations, the decisions are going to have to be made, you know, and I use one example, but yeah, we've had some very preliminary conversations with our neighbors who utilize the pool. Where do those dollars go? That's another question. Who's having that conversation and what that looks like? Is that the aquatics fundraising committee or is that members of council? I know what my opinion is, but those decisions need to be made around those type of things. So I'll put those together, but I would suggest that this become a standing item. If council is agreeable that these decisions need to be happening at council, then it should be a standing item of council.
So we get it resolved.
Right.
Okay. All right, let's move on to items for consideration. What items would you like to pull out for further discussion? Steve, go ahead. You're muted, Steve.
Yeah, sorry, I would like, you'd think after 2 years I'd catch on, but I would like 2C, please, and 3A.
2C and 3A. Okay. Anybody else have others? I think we need to pull 5A because we need to name some people to attend the annual meeting. Any others?
What was that one, Andy? Sorry.
So far we've got 2C and 3A, and then I mentioned 5A, the Wellington North Power one.
5A, thank you.
Any others? Okay, so we'll deal with everything else. A recommendation here that all items listed under items for consideration on the May 9th, 2022 council agenda, with the exception of those items identified for separate discussion, be approved and the recommendations therein be adopted. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we'll go back to 2C. This is in regard to the rezoning of the Kyle Woods property in the former Broadline location. So I'll read the recommendation that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the planning report prepared by Jessica Rahim, Senior Planner, County of Wellington, dated May 3rd, 2022, regarding the recommendation report, Kyle Woods zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 06/22, concession 9, part of lot 1, 9638, concession 8, and 9630, concession 8, Wellington North. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa. Open the floor for discussion. Steve?
Yeah, thanks. I just brought this up. I'm not opposed to to permit the construction of the 3,500 foot square shop. That's fine, but as brought up before, really opposed to taking any more prime ag out of production. And I think we've done enough of that for one day. And that's all kind of I wanted to say. I'm all right with the building, but yeah, not with encroaching on any more prime ag.
Okay. I don't believe this application involves anything more than was already taken up previously. Jessica, I see you popped up. Did you have?
No, through you, Mayor. I don't have anything to add. I'm just here if there's any direct questions to myself. So
Okay.
just letting
great,
you know that
thank
I'm
you.
still here.
I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 3A. This is in regard to the cultural roundtable. And the recommendation is that the council, excuse me a second. Getting a little dry. The recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report EDO 2022-17, being report on the Wellington North Cultural Roundtable. And further, that council, in recognition of the importance of cultural planning, as well as the contribution of local cultural resources to the quality of life and sense of community across the township, supports the committee recommendation to appoint the following community members to the Wellington North Cultural Roundtable: Doris Cassan, Jess Pfister, Sue Doherty, Gerald Townsend, and Harry Engel. And further, that council supports the reappointment of the following community members to the Wellington North Cultural Roundtable: Gail Donald, Penny Rankin, Linda Ruska, Jim Taylor, and Bonnie McDougall. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Lisa. And go ahead and discuss. Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all of those that volunteer and take the time to be on this cultural roundtable and reappoint and get back onto the roundtable. And I enjoy all the cultural moments as well. And I think this is vital to our community, and knowing where we're from and how we got here is a way forward on where we're going to be going. So just wanted to reach out and thank them as well again, to all that are involved in the cultural roundtable.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Any other questions or comments? Lisa?
Just to add to that, at the meeting where we discussed the cultural roundtable, it was so nice to see from the community how much interest there actually was in the cultural roundtable, and the numbers of different people that did have an interest in being on the committee. So I'm really looking forward to having some new ideas, and this is kind of a really diverse group. So this is wonderful.
Thanks, Lisa. Any other questions or comments? I would just add my thanks to the volunteers on this committee as well. It's nice to have this kind of support in terms of providing advice to council on how to preserve and protect and advance the culture of our community. So it's a valued thing that we carry forward, and we're delighted that we have people willing to continue and new volunteers to participate. So congratulations to all of them. I'll call the motion then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 5A now. This is the correspondence from Wellington North Power Inc. And while I'm reading it out, think about whether you're going to volunteer for this or not. So the recommendation is as follows: that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive correspondence dated April 27th, 2022 regarding the 2022 annual shareholder meeting. And further, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North appoint the following persons representing the Township of Wellington North at Wellington North Power Annual Shareholder Meeting to be held. That's not the right date.
No.
I think it's May
31st.
May 31st. Thank you, Dan. 2022. And we need some names to insert in here. I think Councilor McCabe already volunteered. Do we have Sherry? Are you volunteering?
Yes,
Okay.
better to volunteer than be voluntold.
That almost sounded reluctant.
No, it's all good. I've done it before.
Okay. Councilor Hearn, are you volunteering as well?
Sure. Is it in person or is it?
It's a virtual.
Okay. Just for reference. Thank you.
Okay. So we have Councilor Hearn, Burke, and McCabe. Include in that recommendation. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councilor Burke, seconded by Councilor McCabe. Any discussion on that? Thank you to the volunteers. I know, Dan, you don't get to volunteer because you already need to be there.
You either.
Not much
All
of a
right.
choice.
All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to notice of motion. Do we have any notice of motion this afternoon? Okay. Community group meeting program report. Anybody have anything they'd like to report on today? Steve?
I just wanted to thank staff and everyone that showed up to the volunteer appreciation supper last week. I think that was fantastic. I believe there's about 170, 175 people that showed up, and can't thank the volunteers enough. What they do individually and as service clubs that we have in both Arthur and Mount Forest are just exceptional. And I mean, the chat that we had about the pool tonight is, or this afternoon, is is evident of that as well with the Mount Forest lines and the Arthur lines with their skate park and the Arthur Optimists with everything that they do as well. So, and then the individuals as well. Too many to be named, as there's about 175 that were there, and I'm sure there's more that are reluctant to come out and be publicly thanked, but can't do enough without them.
Well said, Steve. There's many more volunteers than 175 across the township for sure, and we'd love to have them all come and be recognized, but certainly we're glad to be able to do that for the ones that were able to come. Other questions in regard to that? Anybody have anything else they'd like to report on this afternoon? Okay, I don't have anything myself today, so we'll move on to bylaws. So just give me a second here, please. There's one of these bylaws that we have to amend, right, Karen?
Is Jessica still there? It was the Tony Pillar bylaw that has already been passed, and then there was the fees and charges bylaw. The schedule F, I believe, was incorrect. So we pass that as amended, and that would be bylaw 5022 as amended.
50-22?
050-22.
Okay, so should we pull that out and have a separate resolution for it?
If you want to, or you can just read the resolution as bylaw 05022 as amended, as you're reading those
Okay.
numbers out.
Okay, no, I can do that. All right, so we have a recommendation here that bylaw number 49-22, 50-22 as amended, 51-22, 52-22, 53-22, 54-22, 55-22, 56-22, 57-22, and 58-22 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Okay, I get a mover and a seconder for that, please. Moved by Sherry, seconded by Dan. Any discussion on any of those bylaws? Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, can I have bylaw F pulled? I support all the bylaws except for F.
Okay.
So I'd like to
All right.
have that pulled separately.
Okay, let me start over then.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So F is 54-22. Okay. Why don't we deal with that first then? Okay, did I get a mover and a seconder already, Karen?
Sherry and Dan.
You okay with moving that, Sherry? for
Need to move
discussion?
it. It has to be
Okay.
put on the floor.
Okay. So the recommendation is that bylaw number 54-22 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. And we have a mover and seconder already. So did you want to speak to that, Sherry?
No, I'd just like to say I didn't support it when it came to council originally, and I still don't support the move of giving them all of the allocations that they requested.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. And now we'll go back and deal with bylaw number 49-22, 50-22 as amended, 51-22, 52-22, 53-22, 55-22, 56-22, 57-22, 58-22 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Cultural moment. We have a cultural moment, and I hope you'll bear with me. The type size is a little on the small side today. So the cultural moment for May 9th celebrates the Four Corners Quilters Guild. Creativity in part is fueled by a drive to explore something new. It draws us towards the next big project idea, which can keep us from finishing those already underway. It's a common phenomena in most creative pursuits. The Four Corners Quilters Guild, based in Mount Forest, was established in 1998. For the members, one of the most enjoyable aspects of quilting is embracing what's new. New techniques or new shops require exploration. Quilters share a creative spirit. To get a measure of in our own guild, an informal online survey was conducted in January 2022. As the pandemic took hold of our second winter, many quilters had the opportunity to enjoy time in their sewing spaces. The survey encouraged us to go through existing projects, revisit the motivation to start them, and consider why some may remain unfinished. From the respondents, we learned that we have a good balance of beginner and seasoned quilters ranging from 5 to more than 40 years of experience. Collectively, we represent around 650 quilting years and have completed an estimated 1,500 quilts. That's over 50 finished quilts per person. Since roughly half of our members completed the survey, we might reasonably double that estimate to 3,000 finished quilts made by all guild members over their quilting careers. Of course, each quilter may have a unique personal view of what constitutes a finished quilt. We also identified an estimated 300 quilts in the works. Multiple projects underway at the same time is not uncommon and could be deemed an inevitable byproduct of the drive to create. However, we discovered that 13% of those unfinished projects have been sitting for more than a decade. A handful of members are quite proficient at completing what they've started, but in general, the longer we've been quilting, the longer the unfinished list tends to become. After all, the most exciting project is always the next new one. The number one reason given for any particular project to remain unfinished is I've lost interest, motivation, or just don't like it anymore. The survey confirmed that enjoyment from quilt making comes from all aspects, start to finish, with emphasis on seeing what certain pattern and fabric combinations and design choices can do. There's also great satisfaction in seeing the quilts find a good home. It seems that for many of us, quilting is at least as much about the process as the product. While the survey was just for fun, it reinforced a strong drive to create an enthusiasm for learning. We're certain the responses were conservative, both in terms of estimated quilts completed and those still underway. But the message is that there's a lot of quilt making going on in this community and a determination to keep going. The Four Corners Quilters Guild looks forward to celebrating its 25th anniversary next year. New members and guests are always welcome. Find us on Facebook, or for more information, called Four Corners Quilters Guild at gmail.com. That's all lowercase, and that's submitted by Linda Hruska, Wellington North Cultural Roundtable. That's your cultural roundtable for May the 9th, and may all those warm thoughts carry you through the rest of the day. We'll move on to our confirming bylaw. Recommendation here that bylaw number 61-22, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North at its regular meeting held on May 9th, 2022, be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Dan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to adjournment. That the recommendation that the regular council meeting of May the 9th, 2022 be adjourned at 4:38 p.m. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve. All those in favor? That's carried. We are adjourned. Oh, we are officially adjourned, but I just remind you about the meetings coming up. Mount Forest BIA and is having their meeting at the Mount Forest and District Sports Complex tomorrow at 8 p.m. Recreation Parks and Leisure is having it tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. And I believe that's in combination with the Aquatics Ad Hoc Advisory Committee.
Yes.
Yes.
The Mount Forest Chamber of Commerce is also tomorrow at 7 p.m. Boy, there's a lot happening tomorrow. The Arthur Chamber of Commerce is meeting on Wednesday at 5:30. And the Arthur Chamber office, staff and council goodbye for Mike Givens. Now, I don't think we're going to let him leave, but May the 18th from 11:30 to 1:30. Arthur BIH meeting on the 18th at 7:30 PM via video conference. Cultural Roundtables meeting the 19th at noon in the municipal office. And our next regular meeting of council is May the 24th at 7 PM. And just another reminder, our Growth, Housing and Development Public Information meeting for Mount Forest is scheduled for the Thursday, the 26th from 5:30 to 7:30.
Just a reminder, the May 24th meeting is a Tuesday.
Great. Thank you for that, Karen. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Have a good
Thank you.
week.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. See ya.